So I took my triliptal wicked early this morning. I woke up like 4:30, something like that, very sick. I just spit up a bunch in between videos and this morning. But it's not as bad. This is probably one of my better sick mornings, I guess. I'm not seizing them in front of a heater, so not that bad. But I want to give an example of why you gotta leave things to the people who were there. Like, for instance, my cutting. I've only done cutting, like, as a high school during goth one time. That's it. But we have hundreds of injuries my mother called self-harming. And that's where people get confused. Because I have the context of each one. When I was sucking on my skin, why was that going on? Well, because my mother gave me pills before, way before that, causing an overdose, causing a sudden change in my body. Teachers are calling me in hallways, asking me what the sudden change in my body's about. I don't know. So I try to figure it out. So I go, okay, my skin felt like some other way just weeks and weeks ago. And when I was a kid sucking on my thumb, it didn't feel like this. So let's suck on my arm and see if it feels different. Then I have a hickey from that. My father asked me why I'm sucking on my skin. I tell him it's to see what it feels like. I need to see what sucking feels like on my arm. My mother turns that into a fantasy of self-harming. I bump in the furniture. She turns that into self-harming. In Texas, she's trying to make stories up to the doctor about all these different disorders, but Texas won't go along with it. Then I start talking about the overdose in my nervous system, asking for help, and my mother doesn't want me getting help, so she now goes with New Mexico. Remember, my father leaves out information that makes this hard for other people. Like, why did we move to Texas? We moved there because my mother wanted to move to Texas, and she convinced me to vote her way. My father got the job interview, but he did not want to take it. He was refusing to take it. My mother wanted to take it, but it was a tiebreaker. So they got me to do a vote. I said yes, no, yes, no. My mother got me to stick to yes, and we moved to Texas. But why would my mother want to move to Texas if nobody else really wanted to and if it was a bad idea? Good question. I know the answer to that because I have a lot of context that nobody else in the family has. I know what the doctors were going through. I know what the teachers were doing. I remember what happened during my school. I got called in a hallway. All the teachers were concerned about this sudden change in the way I walk, talk, and write my name. And it was right all of a sudden. It wasn't like, oh, he has coordination issues that we're starting to discover. It was more like teachers calling me into a hallway, being like, Zach, what happened to you last night? You're moving and talking differently. Is there a change in medications at home? Stuff like that. And then physical therapy and speech therapy starts up. But my mother is downplaying it to, oh, he was just born with all this. He was born with all this. Meanwhile, when I was in the orphanage before I met this mother, I came in first place in treading water. I also was one of the more athletic kids for my age group, and I was keeping up with my classes above the other kids. Everything was pretty normal except for I was hyperactive and I couldn't concentrate. That's it. But when I met this mother, oh, and I might have had some needing glasses problems. But when I met this mother, everything changed because she had an excuse and an illness for everything. My mother smacked me. It's a mental illness that I have. I bump in the furniture. I'm a self-harmer. It's a mental illness I have. If I am trying to do a science experiment and they don't understand the experiment, I'm homicidal. If I try to be a goth in style, I'm suicidal. If I bump in the furniture, I'm suicidal. If I jump into a pool at a pool party and catch the back of my foot in front of 10 witnesses who can clearly see it was just a regular accident that it can happen to any kid, any normal kid, but my mother turns it into self-harming. So does that mean every single kid that jumps into a pool and catches the back of their foot real bad, I should have them diagnosed with self-harming? If I'm in charge of special needs children again, and one of them catches the back of their foot, should I believe my mother's teaching and bring him to a psychiatrist saying that he's a self-harmer because he jumped in a pool and caught the back of his foot? Because I know my brother was right there while my mother screamed this at my face, getting her nose in my face, going, "You got the back of your foot cut open on purpose. You're doing this to yourself on purpose. I'm calling the doctor because you're a self-harmer." And then my brother and my father be like, "We're not so sure about that. There's witnesses, and this is pretty bad, and he's hurt." Whatever. And then as soon as they walk away, "I don't care what they say. You're a self-harmer." That's what I'm telling the doctor. That is exactly what my mother said. She got right up in my face as soon as they walked to get to the kitchen. She did this every time. If people argued with her, she would yup them until they walked away and then get in my face, backhand me, drug me, tell the doctors whatever she believed anyways. And then I would get hurt and hurt and hurt and hurt. Still today, I get hurt. I need to go to the doctors and I can't get help because my mother cut it off, trying to make sure nobody could help me. My mother wanted to make sure that nobody could help me based upon what she was doing to me. She violated my body. I feel like my mother raped me in a way. She did worse than that, though. She violated my body with pills, and she violated my name and my future by dragging my name through the mud, even though there was nothing more going on with me than any other child in our family. If my father goes, "Oh, no, you were especially bad." "Oh, yeah? Name a bad thing." "You tried to burn my house down." Again, your wife's fantasies. No, what I did do is I brought a book of matches to a closet and I tried to look at the glowy thingy. Now, if that is why I'm so bad, then you better punish your nephew in the same way you punished me. You better put him in an institution and have him injected with drugs because he brought a lighter to school. Oh, that's not normal to put your 5-year-old child in a type of hospital, having him drugged because he just brought a book of matches? "Oh, but you were saying you tried to burn down." "Because your wife told me that's what I was doing." She was always coming up with these fantasies and then telling me I had to admit it. Remember that, Dad. I would say I'm not self-harming and I'm not do something, or I don't know what I'm doing because I'm only 5 or 6. And then my mother would say, "Well, you're doing this because of this. Admit it already. You're doing this, aren't you? I'm a nurse and I used to be a nurse, so I know every psych illness and you have them all." This type of attitude is what really was the problem. It wasn't that I was a normal kid curious about a book of matches. That's the same for my nephew and most children. Monkey see, monkey do. You see a glowing, "Oh, that's cool." That's normal. And I wasn't trying to burn down the house. Well, why did my father think that? Because my mother kept on saying it. She even got me to repeat it at 5 years old. She did this a lot. I wouldn't know something. My mother would say, "Well, it's this, and you need to admit it." And then I'm repeating the bullshit, and next thing I know, I'm getting held down on the ground, injected with drugs. People are looking at me naked, and they're putting me in circles, having me do squats, having me do anything they want. I'm just their dancing monkey. I'm the dancing monkey in the program, and then they bring me back, or I should say the hospitals. I'm always everybody's dancing monkey. You want to inject my body? Fine. You want to smack me? Fine. You want to hit me with a ruler? Fine. You want to push me down a hill? Fine. You want to inject me with experimental drugs? Fine. My mother and father signed off on all of it. I've been given experimental drugs. I've been given every single drug I think is in the book, literally. I mean, literally. My mother was literally just picking through a book like, "I want this one and I want that one," like she's shopping through a catalog, without even knowing the side effects or what she's doing to her son's body at 7 years old. Then when we go to Texas, she keeps on trying to do this, but they won't do this in Texas. The doctors don't feed off money like they do in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, the doctors do not bite the hand that feeds them. So in Massachusetts, if you bring your kid into the doctors and you're paying through insurance or whatever, as long as you keep paying, some of them, or a lot of them, will go along with your wife's Munchausen syndrome if she keeps on using mental illnesses that can't be proven or disproven. That's part of the problem with that type of illness. But remember, my mother slipped me drugs. She gave me drugs I wasn't prescribed as well. So we're not talking about my mother just having doctors drug me based upon fantasies. We're also talking about my mother actually giving me drugs I wasn't prescribed that cause horrible, horrible reactions. These things cause permanent damage in your body, and you have to get better. And I will keep on knocking on the federal office's door because I was trafficked across state lines. And I don't care. I will come and I will fucking do, oh my God, I will make sure that my mother's curse gets passed off to every last motherfucker in my family and see how they like it before I die in the woods. Before I take this laying down, every single person will feel exactly what my mother made me feel. If you guys want me to feel that through my childhood, during my teenage years, during my 20s, and then you guys want to run from it in my 30s, well, that's okay. Run as far as you can. Because guess what? My mother's curse is only from drugs and druggings, and the whackings and the beatings don't bother me. So I would never hurt. I'm never going to hit anybody. I'm not going to shoot anybody. I'm not going to hurt anybody. But if they run away, I will treat them exactly as my mother treated me, by passing on the curse before I die. And that means instilling permanent disabilities that no doctor will ever figure out and that causes pain and suffering. And unless they think that that's wrong, if my family thinks that giving somebody else drugs that causes permanent pain and suffering is wrong, then they can admit that to me, and I'll say, oh, I think the same thing. But if my family's going to go and think letting their wife cause permanent damage to another person's body with drugs and chemicals and substances to try to get her way, if they think that this is okay to let continue, because it's continuing to this day, my mother's and father's choices and the words they said at the doctors are still hurting me when I go to the doctors today. If I go to the doctors today to get something looked at, there is a big chance that I'll walk out there with more injuries than I walked in because of my mother and father poisoning the doctors with their words and with the history that they have created based upon a bunch of fantasies. A kid looking at the glowy thing in the closet, he needs a spanking. But he doesn't need a mother blowing that out of proportion and sticking him on a bunch of drugs because she's over worried and they have fantasies. And this is how this thing has got out of control. My mother spent 15 years doing this, and then my father just gave up and let it continue. But that's not how this works. And well, it can if they want. If they want, I can go put really cute poisons all over their houses and their doorknobs in the parking lots. I can follow them to the grocery store and I can put poison on their fucking doorknobs that cause 4 years to kick in that no doctors will ever figure out, and see how they like being in pain and suffering from another person putting chemicals into their body against their will. But I think that is wrong behavior. Now, as soon as my family agrees that what they are doing to me is wrong, and then they do something to make it better, then I won't think that this is a good idea no more. But if I end up in the woods, one of the main ideas I have is pass on the curse. If my family thinks they're going to put their wife's and their mother's bullshit on some little orphan kid to handle for the rest of his life, oh, we have a crazy woman around here that likes to mess around with pills, she likes to drink, and we're not going to fucking keep any eye on her, and she's going to move this kid to Texas, New Mexico, Maine, all over the country, and then we're going to continue just blaming the little orphan kid, victim blaming, coming up with all these crazy illnesses that don't exist. I mean, for goodness sake, the schizophrenia hit that home. When my mother tried to convince me I was schizophrenic, when every doctor and everybody in society knew that that was bullshit, why is my mother still pushing this fantasy? I can ask that to anyone in my family. Why did my mother try to convince me I was schizophrenic when I wasn't? And then She tried to get me to lie to doctors and make up stories that weren't true by feeding me false information. Why was she doing this? It doesn't matter why. Something needs to be done about it now. My doctors are tainted. Your wife tainted it. Your father tainted it. My father tainted it. Now, I brought this to my father, but he keeps on running away. And if my father dies before handling it, then their debt passes on to their children. So, if you want to, if the rest of the family wants to be held holding the bag, fine. But the easy solution is to just tell the right people what happened to me. Talk to me. I'm going to need another mailing address and a whole setup again. I had this whole setup for 6 years, but 3 years, maybe even 4. It's been ready to go for my father. I've got the neurologist ready. I got Social Security ready. I'm working at a job. I got my own apartment. I'm helping disabled elderly people who are the hardest to work with in society. I'm doing all the things necessary. I got the setup all set so I can move on with my life, but the doctor needs my father to come clean with my medical history, with some of the school names, and if he doesn't have it, then he's going to need to speak to me, and we're going to have to do something, like walk in there together and have a conversation, and then he just nods his head like he did for his wife. If you're going to nod your head in agreement with your wife to hurt a child, you might have to nod your head in agreement to then undo your wife's mistakes. But no, he just rather just run away. He'll nod his head to hurt somebody and cause permanent damage to their body, while knowing doctors are really important to get right. He knows that a doctor is only as good as the information you give him. He also knows there's things called side effects. He knows that a lot of these drugs have crazy names, and if he's seen some of the horror stories of some of the people that were on these drugs that had horrible things happen to their body, maybe he would think twice. But instead, he allowed his wife to go off the rails for 15 years. She ended up dying from it. She was popping her own pills, and she was guilty. You could see it in her. She was extremely guilty to what she was doing, and she thought I knew. She thought I knew that she was drugging me and lying. Nope. She said she was telling the truth. My father said she was telling the truth. The doctors questioned her. The teachers questioned her. My brother questioned her. My nephew questioned her. My sister questioned her. I questioned her. But as far as my father and mother went, they told me everything was true. So all I could do was question the truth. I didn't know she was lying, though. But my mother assumed that I knew because I was bringing it up at the doctors all the time. The overdose I knew about, but I believed it really was some allergy attack. But my mother snickered when I said that once time. But it's an allergy attack, my mom said when I was a child. She goes, and then said nothing. Just, what tells me her allergy attack story must have not been true. And I started to think about these interactions with my mother. Like how she first called it an allergy attack for the first couple years, like the first 2 years. But then she said, I forget. Oh, I forget. She also never came up with the medication list for the doctor. When this was brought up, my mother goes, yeah, something happened. It was a reaction to a combination of medications. And then the doctor would go, oh, what day was this and what medications were there? Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember the medication list or what he was on. And then she wouldn't bring it to him. And then there'll be a different doctor and I'd bring it up and then she'd give the same bullshit. But then we'd go to a different doctor in Texas and all of a sudden, 6 months, a year later, she's forgotten everything. All my allergies, everything. But I'm not going to stop trying to get better. No, I need to know what this is. Something's definitely different about me. I feel different. My nervous system feels different. Now, I'm bumping in the furniture a lot and stuff like that, but I remember, this happened to me at 5 to 7 years old. I didn't have a body for very long. I had it long enough to know I could tread water better than other kids, and I definitely didn't have any of this coordination issue bullshit or any of that crap. I mean, I wasn't the most coordinated for 3, 4 years old. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I came out of the womb ready to talk, walk, and ready to go. But from the age of 3 to 5, my walking agility and coordination was getting better. From the age of 5 to 6, I had an overdose where it all got destroyed instantly to a visible point to anybody who knew me for the last couple years. If you've seen me walking, talking, and moving for the last couple years, you would see a slight difference in my handwriting, a slight difference in the way I walk, and a slight difference in my speech. Now, the teachers, one main teacher, but three other teachers all noticed this. One main teacher knew it was all of a sudden change. And this continued. There was more red flags and more red flags about my mother's Munchausen syndrome illness. But remember, my mother, none of her real shit, none of the real world shit that happened is on the record. It's all fantasies my father spun. Like my mother's death. Let's see if that's in the real world. Let's see if my mother's death is in the real world. Now, the way I say it is when people ask, what did my mother die of? I say liver failure. Oh, if they ask, how did she get liver failure? I tell them she drank a lot and she was popping pills. Now, we can't lie about that. We know she was popping my Vicodin. We know she was popping my Xanax. We know she had a whole closet of pills. We knew she popped extra pink opiates. We know that she was always trying to get more opiates. We even know she took my father's opiates after I got caught by her taking my father's opiates, but she never told my father so that she could just teach me a lesson by taking them herself. That way, if my father found out, she could just blame me and then never say anything so the lesson doesn't actually get learned. My mother's just acting like a child. So there's all that shit. We know my mother's popping pills for sure. I even brought this to my father's attention. She got caught red-handed with her hand in the cookie jar stealing Vicodin that was prescribed to her son. There was still an active prescription that was still needed if there was any more migraines that sent the son to the floor. But the mother's trying to finish off the bottle all on her own. So we know that there's pills and alcohol. So that's what really happened. My mother drank alcohol even as her liver was failing and she was on the transplant list. Yes, my mother was on the liver transplant list. The hospital let her come home for 24 hours, and she spent that time trying to look in the alcohol cabinet to get alcohol, poured herself a drink, and then started drinking it. Then she's in her room and she falls out of bed saying she's coming back from the bathroom. But it didn't sound, I was in the other room when this fall happened, and it sure didn't sound like she was in the bathroom. There wasn't like a flush, it wasn't like anything like that. Now, maybe she's telling the truth, but it's more likely that she went to the closet instead and just didn't want to tell us that she was going in the closet, because then we would ask why. Then she would have to say pills because she didn't change any of her clothing. So she just said bathroom. But we don't know that one. All we know for sure is she was taking pills from me. And we know that she was drinking downstairs that same day with her liver failure. We also know she was on the liver transplant list as she is drinking. We also know she was drinking heavily before her liver failed. But now let's hear what my father put down on why she passed away. Okay, so the doctors put down non-alcohol induced cirrhosis because my father tried to keep the alcohol usage out of the doctor's office, but they knew. They knew from the blood, but she used to be a nurse at that same hospital 20, 40 years before that, so she got a little break there. Well, how about when she died? They certainly put cirrhosis as the cause of her death, right? Well, she stopped breathing in the ambulance on the way for a liver transplant. So they probably would call it a cardio infraction and something to do with, oh my God, I can't think of it. Not suffocation, it is. Anyways, you stop breathing. But that also doesn't explain the situation. It explains that she stopped breathing, her heart stopped in an ambulance, but she was also going through liver failure that was already killing her. So that would be the liver failure. Okay, and then what caused the liver failure was drugs and alcohol. So what is my father going with? The heart attack? Breathing stopping? The liver failure just being liver failure? No, he says it's old age. She died of old age. What a fucking big dumping of poop. But, I mean, if it was my wife, I would want to protect her as long as there was nobody else getting hurt. I mean, if it was polite conversation at a dinner party, I wouldn't be saying these things. But if it was my son's doctor, if it was my son's social worker that's supposed to help him get a living for the rest of his life, oh, of course I would be saying, well, my wife, yeah, she drank and popped a lot of pills before she passed away and she went through liver failure. Yeah, there's probably some truth to what my son is saying. I don't want my son to get hurt just because I want to keep a secret. But my father's the opposite. He's willing to kill me to keep his secrets. As long as he can keep a secret, I can die someplace like a pig. He would rather see me get gut down the middle with a sharp, nice little fishing knife than ever take responsibility for any of his actions or his wife's actions in the last 25 years. He'd rather see a car pop my head like a blueberry. He'd rather see more pictures of my face like Frankenstein from seizures. He'd rather see me in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I mean, I've already lost so much parts of my body I'll never get back. I've already had so many more head injuries. There's words I have difficulty saying that I used to be able to say last year. Every time I have a seizure and a head injury, it gets more and more difficult for me. Every time. And does it have to be this way? No. The only thing holding me in this spot is my family. I only have to go to the doctor, go to Social Security, and just work my hardest. That's it. And if I get injured or if I have injuries, don't code the work. I have a problem where I work, massive hours even while injured. And that's my father's and my family's fault. Yeah, I literally work 50 hours, 60 hours during COVID. Actually, yeah, during COVID, I was working 60 hours. I had a seizure on the side of the road. I left my own nephew's party to get overtime while going into the emergency room. I literally needed surgery to get all my teeth out. I had 3 infections. I also caught COVID or the flu at some point during that, and I still was doing over 50 hours, a couple 60s, and there was 170 where I did 7 days, 10 hours a day. And I did this while getting injured, while going to the doctor. Well, why would I? Now, this was obviously I got injured even more at the end of that. I had more seizures, more injuries. You can't push yourself that hard without it being a problem. But why would I be pushing myself that hard? For one, I needed to survive. I need the money to survive because my father screwed me so hard that if I don't injure myself for money, then I end up getting injured and dead in the woods. So it's very important that I have enough money to stay out of living in the woods. Number 2, I need a mailing address and a phone. Number 3, because my family continues to call me lazy as I work 60 hours and I walk everywhere. I would like to see my family walk to help somebody else out. You know what they would do? They are so fucking lazy. If they had a disability like mine, they would just drive. They would just blame it on the other drivers. Oh, I had a seizure? Well, I'll just tell it. No, that driver ran me off the road. Yeah, some driver ran me. They would lie. They would manipulate because they're lazy. The right thing to do is to do the hard work. You don't drive. You walk the miles and miles every day of your life, working hard. And if you need to work a job, you walk the miles there and the miles back. And if your job keeps you an extra hour and there's no more buses, you walk the 2 hours home. Yes, I had to walk from Dover all the way to Rochester on at least 10 different occasions, all because my job held me over the last bus. That was when I lived down where Walmart is in Dover, and the last bus going back is at 6:30. And the last bus going the other way, the last bus coming at all from the bus station down that main road 108 is at 8:30. Or no, that was 8:30 one direction, 9:30 the other. But 6:30 is the last one coming from Walmart. So even if you ran to get the 8:30 bus at 99 on 108, if you're held past 9 or 10, you still have to walk home. But a lot of times that's when they close. 10, 9, change of shift, usually 9. You got a 2 o'clock, 9 o'clock, stuff like that. Well, I ran into this over and over where my work needed me, but I needed to take the bus or I was stuck down there. And because I usually run stores by myself, or just have one coworker like I did near Walmart, or I'm the manager of the whole store, it's impossible for me to get the rides. I ask, but they all want lots of money and I pay it. But there's not always that option either. So I get stuck with no ride. Plus, if they're short-handed, and that's why they're asking me to stay late, there won't be anybody to drive me home because I'm the one staying late. So for a reason, because nobody can come. So, anyways, yes, when I'm doing stuff like that, and then my family calls me lazy, and then even that could be a contagious. My family calls me lazy to my workers. Then my workers buy it. And then they see David being lazy, my roommate. And then they wonder if that means that I'm lazy because David's lazy. And then all this becomes a big, oh great, now I got a big another problem to fix thanks to my family. Now I got to prove and work 70 hours while bleeding, while having seizures on the floor, getting picked up out of them in ambulances, once again, just to show I'm not lazy. I'm willing to put myself through death. I'm willing to work myself to death to pay my rent and help society out. How about you? I'm willing to walk home for 2 hours in the cold while having seizures. I'm willing to walk home during summer and go 2 hours just to stay late. I can say no, and then my work can hate me, but then I might lose my job, and then I wouldn't be a hard worker, would I? Hard workers stay late and walk 2 hours home because there are no more buses, right? No, people don't even fucking do their jobs. I doubt that anybody in my family is doing their job to the book, to the letter, going the extra mile, working actually extra like I do. I not only work hard, I put in the extra mile. And I'm injured, disabled, something none of my family has to deal with. They all have a leg up thanks to somebody else giving them it, while my family gave me a leg down. And if you don't believe that, oh no, we did great giving Zach a leg up in the future. Oh really? Let's see, my education. I got a great education I can give to my jobs, right? Oh no, I'm missing 4 years and it's spotty at best and it's just a complete mess. Well, who gave me that education? Did the state choose to give me that education? No, all the other orphans got a basic education. What? Orphans got a basic education, but you didn't? How could that be? Oh, because orphans don't have a Patricia and a Henry who are elderly adults taking care of them that are greedy and more worried about their vacations and the safety and well-being of raising a child. Oh, so you are missing years and years and years of education and it's lacking. Absolutely. And then they just called me stupid and made up a mental illness to cover that one up. So everything your mother made or father made a mistake in, then they would turn into a mental illness like you just can't learn. Yeah, I was learning just fine. I was passing my classes, first grade, second grade. Even in Texas, I was a little behind because now we're moving me to a new state. They're reevaluating me for the first year. I'm having to redo stuff I already know over and over and over. The same thing. When do I get to do something else? And then when we finally get to the something else, my mother puts me in Texas, New Mexico, then we go to Maine, no education in Maine or New Mexico, then I miss out a year in Mass. Well, so why did that happen? Oh, because my father decided to put me in these situations. And then when I told my father that this was a bad situation, or I told my father what my classes were like, nothing changed. He would either blame the victim, me, or he would just call the school, they would give him a story, or he would call the car salesman and they would give him a story, and he'd go, no, the car salesman says the car was fine when they drove it off the lot. Yeah, a car salesman sells you a car. You drive it off the lot, the tires fall off as soon as you get home. Tires, frame, it all just starts falling apart when you get home. You bitch to your father that the car salesman must have sold you a bad car because you've only had it for a day and everything just fell off of the thing. You call the car salesman goes, no, that car was perfect when it left the lot. We inspect every vehicle before it leaves the lot, and we know that those vehicles are perfect. Your son must have just drove it weird. And then I get yelled at because my father's believing a car salesman. That's how things work in my family. you gotta have the first person information. So if I was at the school, if I'm going to a school and I'm telling you that I am not having classes, for one, I am more than happy to play with toys. For two, the other kids are more than happy to play with toys. For three, we don't know how important an education is because we're children. For four, I had the courage to come up and tell my father anyways. For five, the teacher actually punished me and had us sit in our chairs all day long, or at least told us to do that, as punishment as I stood up in front of the class. And then we still played with toys for the whole year. How hard do I have to push my father just to be a good person? Not a father. We're not talking about treating me like a son. It doesn't have to be a father-son relationship. It can be, I am a human being and you need to be a good person relationship. But instead, it's more like, oh, who cares? Let the kid die. He's not getting an education? Well, the teacher said it's fine, so fuck it. It's that type of attitude where I go without an education because my father goes, well, the teacher says it's fine, fuck it. That's his attitude. Just fuck it. Fuck the kid's future. Fuck it. He's probably lying. Just fuck it. It's not important. The teacher needs to make her money. My son doesn't need a future. That type of attitude. Like, if you have a choice, if your son's telling the truth, then he just missed out on lots of education in his life. And this is when I'm telling him during childhood. If I'm lying, then the worst case scenario is you've now bugged the hell out of a school for months on end. But instead, they go with, oh, we should just fuck it. We should make a light phone call and just say fuck it. Meanwhile, I go without what I need for the future. It's like those stupid decisions. I mean, you have one big mistake that could ruin a person's entire life. And then you have somebody that you might have to work a little extra couple hours just to make sure. Or maybe you should take a look at the school to see what the classroom is like. If it's just a couple kids, or you know what, you could even invite the classmates to your house. You could say, Zach, why don't you invite your friends over and then see what they say? Yeah, let's see what the other kids say. If the other kids go, no, we just really play with toys. Now you got your son saying that, and you got the other kids saying it. Because remember, all kids in my little classroom, it really was only like 8 to 10 kids. I'm trying to count it in my head. It could have been 12, but I'm picturing 10 to 12 kids to be total. But you could have had any of them come home with me or be picked up for a day visit, and you could have asked them. Not the kids in the other classroom, not the other kid, Stephen Ferris. He wasn't in my class. He got a real class. He was not any part of us. He was the older kids that got the guy. He actually did do classes. I used to try to sneak in to try to learn math and do classes, and they would let me sit in for like a little bit. But eventually they would say, you have to go back to your regular classroom. And then I'll go back to my regular classroom to play with toys for the rest of the day. Because what they had was a daycare for kids that were like 11 years old. Yes, you're 11 years old, and the school that's supposed to be teaching you math and English and things like that is instead taking the parents' money to run a daycare where they put you in a room, you bring in your own toys, and then they just shut the door. Then they come in, grab you for lunch, they bring you back to the room, they shut you in the door, and you play in the room. Then you go out to play wiffle bat until maybe the buses come. Or sometimes you go back in and you play with more toys. But there was never any lessons planned at all at that school. At least with Via Santa Maria, there was some extracurricular activities, like we went looking for fossils, or they got me a library book so I could identify some bugs. And at least at Via Santa Maria, there was real lesson plans in the last 3 months and in the last year. At the last year, they had books that they would read from us and ask us questions out of. The teacher would have the book, he would read us all the book stuff, and then he would ask us simple questions. And that was at the end. But there was 9 months to a year of no education there. and the end wasn't really much that could ever be used in a real school, and the beginning was stuff. The teacher that came in for the first 3 months that I was at Via Santa Maria, she was a real teacher. She had a lesson plan and everything, but she knew it was an impossible task. You have kids age 7 to like 13, 14, around there. 13 was the oldest, I'm pretty sure. It might have been a 14-year-old that came in, but the two oldest I remember is being two 12-year-olds and a 13-year-old. While I was 8 growing on 9. So, and then I think I got out of there a little after 9 or 10. No, 10. I think I got out of there at 10. So I went there at about 8 or 9, left at 10. Yeah, 8 I went in, 10 I came out. Something around that range. And that whole time, I didn't get an education. Because even if you count the first 3 months, we never even completed one lesson plan. Because you got it all shifted. Plus, like I said, with those age groups, we all just got an hour Monday through Friday. Then she did it like 3 times a week, then once a week. Then she said, sorry, kids, I can't come by anymore. So that's not an education, nothing that can be used. And that's not the beginning of it or the end. Like I just mentioned, there was some stuff going on when we were living in Chelmsford, and one of the first schools I ever went to in Chelmsford. Yeah, I think it was one of the first ever schools I went to in Chelmsford. And it was just a brick kiln road. And that caused a lot of issues too. Like when I got dropped in these schools, I knew nothing. I had nothing of previous lesson plans to go on. It was all gobbledygook to me. Because all these other kids in these schools, usually the real schools I went to, like when I went to Chelmsford Middle School or elementary school, whatever that was, all the other kids, they have years of experience to fall back on to take their classes. For me, I'm getting dropped with no prior information, so I'm literally trying to be like 2 plus y plus x plus m plus w equals 345. That's impossible because you could rearrange the numbers in any order and get that. Yeah, that's a little different. I kind of need to know what some of those other letters are to know what the other letters are to know what the other letters are. So it's an impossible task. So all I could do is try not to be made fun of and listen up to the teachers so I could listen to the lesson plans. So I decided bringing a cool comb in. I won a cool comb at it was this cool little, what do you call those places where you put in the quarters and you play a game and you win tickets? Arcade. Yeah, we went to an arcade, Fun Zone or something, and one of the prizes I could buy with tickets was a flip comb. You know, a comb that kind of looks like the old 1980s greaser knife, the push knife things, but it's really just a comb. So, anyways, I had a comb with me that looked like a knife, kinda, but it's cheesy plastic. The school didn't like this, so I got in trouble. And then I had a lighter on me, and this was much older. This was the lighter that I got in trouble with the slugs and all that. But by the time I was 12, I mean, you've already called me a fire setter when I didn't. I take full responsibility for my fire setting. Like for instance, I did make a fire in at the age of like 13 because my neighbor wanted to in the middle of a side road. So I did do that. We were trying to make a Molotov and we or something like that, but we didn't want to break it open and throw it against something. So we put it in the middle of the road, lit it, and figured it'd be like a firework. It would go boom like a firework. Stupid, it did nothing but just sit there like a candle. So, and then because we tried to put it out, we made it worse. Anyways, so we also got the time where all I did was a science experiment with a slug. I took a match to some slime, and I was injected, and all my mind was all tipped upside down. That really made the fire setting worse, because now I've been looked at naked, I've been held down and double injected with medicine because of another 10-year-old storytelling and the protocols in this hospital. If a 10-year-old tells a story about your meds, apparently it's protocol to just rush to grabbing you, throwing you to the ground, and injecting you with all these other drugs that you just took less than 30 minutes to an hour ago. So double dosing you with like 5 different very dangerous drugs. So you got that going on for not actual fire setting. So we have real fire setting, like my neighbor in the street with me, just like, oh, another neighbor did that in Texas too. He was fire setting without me. I just watched. I had no part in it in Texas. But they still blamed me because some neighbor said there was kids fire setting, and I got blamed for the fat older kid in Texas too. Anyways, so those, and then I was part of the one in Chelmsford, but I never really got like hospitalized and injected. But then I was not fire setting. I was doing a science experiment, the scientific method, and there was no fire setting whatsoever. I was seeing if slime was fireproof, doing it the right way, just like they show it with Bunsen burners and other types of stuff. But then they have me get naked and injected with drugs. So the one I'm not fire setting is the one they hurt me the most on. So now I'm all confused. When I'm in the street with a neighbor, I am apparently, that's better than if it's a science experiment, which actually was all twisted. The science experiment one was twisted by my mother into he's homicidal, he's homicidal, all this Munchausen syndrome bullshit. A kid tries to do a science experiment with a match and she goes off the handles. So I have no problem admitting to my part, just like the bureau. That's probably the one where I'm closest to a fire setter. I'm about 12 after they've now put me in the hospital and injected me with drugs over the slug. So I just got back out of them doing awful things. I have all these drugs in my body, and late at night, I have that lighter from the school where I told you about, and I try to see if heat will make my race car go faster. So I put the lighter to the wheels, and the wheels start looking like they're turning blue. So then I go to roll it on the table, but instead, the wheels melt, the car lights on fire. I try to pick up the car, kind of move it, blow it out. The corner of the table kind of lights. I leave it lit, I blow it out, and then there's a little burnt mark. What I mean by leave it lit for a second is I try to figure out the best way to take care of it. And then I blow it out. But blowing it out really didn't work the first couple times. I kind of had to like really blow. And all of that wasn't good. That's terrible. Yeah, I need to be punished. But why was I thinking like this? Because my mother is doing really weird and fucked up shit to me. All I needed was at age 5 or 6 years old, my mother to go, oh, you wanted to look at the glowy thingy. Okay, here's a spanking. But instead, she goes on these fantasies, confusing me. Like that I am trying to burn down a house when I'm playing with matches. That's not true. So now the whole lesson has been destroyed because my mother's not going with the truth. I never tried to burn down the house, but my mother's having me say it, and now I have adults telling me that's not true, it is true, it's not true, it is true. When adults say, were you purposely trying to burn down the house? And I say, oh, on purpose? Of course not. Oh, well then you weren't trying to burn down the house then. Yes, but my mother says I was. Well, you weren't if you were you doing it on purpose? No. I just wanted to see the glowy thingy. Oh, and then why did you say that you were trying to burn down the house? Because my mother said I was. Oh, I see. So that confused you a lot. Oh, yeah, I was all confused for a 5-year-old. But then nothing happened for years, as I saw people in Texas play with fire. I saw kids in the neighborhood in Chelmsford play with fire. My next door neighbor wanted us to play with fire. Many, many other kids were doing stuff with fire, doing experiments. Even my babysitter, don't forget, my babysitter took a giant can of WD-40 and sprayed it in the garage, showing me how to make a flamethrower with a lighter and a can of butane, or sorry, a WD-40. So I'm 11 years old seeing 16-year-olds play with WD-40, seeing 12-year-olds wanting to make Molotovs, seeing other 12-year-olds in Texas when I'm only, let's say, 7, or I think he was actually 11 or 12 or 13. He was much older than me, bigger kid. He was playing with fire. You got all these people doing these science experiments with fire, and all their parents do is give them a talking to. Meanwhile, my mind, the difference between these other kids and me isn't anything. These kids are doing the same thing I'm doing. My nephew brought a lighter to school. I brought matches to the closet. The difference is they didn't have my mother. They don't have a mother coming in there trying to confuse their brain and convince them that it means something. Oh, you're trying to burn the house down because you could have burned down the house. Instead, when Javier got caught by his uncle and his mother, and he said he didn't know why, we took it as that. And we just told him that that would be a bad idea, you'll get in trouble, and he was punished. See, he had a good uncle and a good mother. So he never had to suffer or have his mind altered just because he brought a lighter to school. So the difference between me and my nephew, Javier, is the mothers and the people around him. See, instead of me having an uncle like me, I had a father like mine. And instead of me having a mother like my nephew's, I had a mother like mine. And if you take the same circumstances, it's very normal across children. I was no different. The behaviors I was exhibiting was no different than any other child. But the pills were different. My mother slipping me pills sure was different. My disability not being established while my mother makes up other disabilities is definitely different. Moving me to Texas while cutting off doctors is different. The teachers talking about coordination issue and my mother putting me in ballet against my will is different. All these choices my mother making is very fucked up and different. My behaviors, when taking at its core of what it was, is very normal. A kid takes a book of matches to see the glowy thingy, lights them, and looks at them. And he doesn't know why he did it. He says, I don't know, I don't know. That's all you have from the kid. Well, that's normal. Kids answer, I don't know, and they look at the glowing thingies, and then when they see it, when they see a book of matches glow, they want to know how to make it glow. Very common behaviors. And when you catch him with something like a pile of matches on the floor because he tried to make it glow, it's not really a pile. It's like the last 6 in the book, tried to go, didn't like, gave up, just in a pile. Now, that's all normal for a child. But is it normal for a mother then to come over, tell the child that he could have burned down the house, so he's trying to burn down the house? So she tells the child, you need to tell your father you were trying to burn down the house. You need to tell him the truth, that you were trying to burn down the house. Now, that's going to confuse a 5-year-old who just got adopted that is doing whatever the mother tells him. The mother says jump, you're supposed to jump. The mother says this, and we all know that I like to repeat what adults told me to repeat during childhood. If an adult said something, I repeated it a lot of the times. So when my mother told me that I could have burned down the house, so I'm trying to burn down the house, so I need to tell my father I was burning down the house, that totally confused me because all I could answer was, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know what I was doing, I don't know. Oh, no, yes, you do. You need an answer. Give me an answer. Give me an answer already, my mother was acting like. Everybody wanted an answer from a 5-year-old who had no clue what he was doing, and he gave that answer. He gave you an answer. He doesn't know. That's the answer you'll get from any 5-year-old in that situation. See, the difference is my mother was psycho. So she couldn't take an answer like that. Instead, she had to make up her own answer and then say, no, 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 this is what you were doing. And then you were expected to repeat it. Oh, I was? Okay. I don't know what I was doing. I don't know. So if you say that's what I was doing, I better believe you. And that was the attitude. So my mother comes up with, this is what you were doing, and then you need to admit it. And then I was expected to repeat her phrases. And then they hurt me. I do something normal that would get me any kid into trouble. My mother says, no, you were doing something else. Yeah, you're doing this. And you need to tell everybody that, and you need to tell them now. And then she goes and gets somebody else, and they bring them in. Now, you tell them exactly what I said. You tell them that. And then the kid repeats it, and then the kid gets hurt. This happened over and over. Yes, I did normal kid things like other kids did. I played with a book of matches at 5 years old. But I also had other normal experiences, like I won a swimming medal and my mother took it from me, getting me drugged and making up stories at the doctor's office. Now, why would she think that metal was stolen? Was it because I was some thief that was big, 5-year-old thief? No, actually, I was the least thief in all of the orphanage. I got awards for being best behaved, and I was the only one who sat on the priest's knee who actually was willing not to be afraid and sit with the priest. Just on the side of him talking. This was an old man, so his penis didn't work, so you don't have to worry about that. But anyways, in the orphanage and in general, even during my childhood, I never wanted to steal anything or take anything. But what did fuck me up is being called a thief all the time when I didn't do anything. Like when I won my swimming medal. That's one of the first times that it really started to be like, well, if you're going to call me a thief, I'll do whatever the fuck I want then. If I'm just going to be charged as a thief constantly when I did nothing wrong, then I'll steal whatever the fuck I want. I'll go in your room, I'll do whatever the fuck I want because you're charging me for stuff when I haven't even done anything yet. And this is when I first met this family. I first got adopted into this family. I show my mother this swimming medal, and my mother goes off the rails that it must belong to an African American because he's more athletic. It can't be from an orphanage because they don't got a pool there. It must be you're out to get me because your old last name is on the medal, and all these other fantasies she's spreading while calling me a liar and a thief. Now, was there any evidence to support my mother's claim? No, just a bunch of fantasies she came up with. The proof is in the pudding. The medal was mine, had my last name on it, and it was won at the YMCA that the orphanage brought us to. And it even was written on by a staff member in the orphanage. But see, my mother might do something really stupid, like say, oh yeah, if a staff member in the orphanage wrote it, then I'm going to call them tomorrow. And then she calls them a giant orphanage with like 1,000 kids, with over like 100 staff member. She's going to call that orphanage and go, did my son really win a swimming medal? And they're going to go, we don't know. And then she's going to hang up and go, you're a liar because they don't know. Stuff like that. You're going to call me a thief and a liar because of your own fantasies. And she started this from day one. Meanwhile, I'm the kid getting all these awards for best behaved kid in the orphanage. I am winning swim classes. I'm doing great in school. Everything's good up to the point of meeting to this Patricia. Then all of a sudden, my swimming medal's being stolen away. When I play with matches or something like that, instead of getting a normal punishment like in the orphanage, now I'm getting brainwashed, manipulated. I'm going in and out of hospitals where they're injecting me with drugs. My mother's telling them, more pills, more pills. I want him on more pills. And so it's just going off the rails right when I meet this mother. I experience an overdose. My nervous system gets fried. And then all this stuff. And then people start noticing it, obviously. So how does my mother take care of that? We'll just move him to Texas. My husband got a job offer that he does not want to take. My father got a job, but he did not want to take it. But my mother got my vote to try to overrule him. But why would my mother want to move? She didn't get the job offer. She doesn't get anything out of it. Oh, she said it was for a change in scenery and for a new start. Well, of course she wants a new start. She's about to go to prison. She knows that. She knows the way the doctors are talking, the way the teachers are talking, the way her son is talking, the things her son is going through that are so severe and awful are gonna get her in trouble. And that's where the guilt comes from. She knew that she did this. She knew that. You could see it in her later. You could see the guilt eating her up. She knew this. I was speaking about the doctor, but she was wondering how the fuck I didn't figure it out sooner. She's like, doesn't Zach know? He's 16 years old now. Doesn't he know that I was fucking him up by now? Doesn't he know that? I tried to fuck him up good. Doesn't he know that I'm screwing with him? So she felt guilty, and she thought that I knew. That's why she got up in my face and went, I don't care. I will tell the doctor that you're self-harming if you like it or not. I don't care how many witnesses. I don't care if my husband, your son, your brother, I don't care who comes up to me and tells me you just jumped in a pool and you caught the back of your foot. I'm telling your doctor that you're a self-harmer. And she would get in my face, wagging her finger, screaming at me. And I couldn't figure out why she was doing this to me. Why is she trying to brainwash me all the time? She's trying to brainwash me and brainwash me into believing I have illnesses I do not have. She's also lying to doctors and trying to fool doctors. She's also lying to her own husband. Why? Why is all the lying coming out of Patricia's mouth? Why is she always lying about me? I've said it 100 times. Why, though? Why? Well, I figured it out in my 20s. It's very obvious why she looked so guilty, why she was losing it, why she was doing so much drugs and drinking by the end. Because it was the guilt. I kept on giving her love, and she gave me pain and suffering in return. Then I would give her more love, and she would give me pain and suffering in return. And then I bailed my father out when they stole money from me. They started using me, sucking my rent out of a state program that was supposed to give me housing and get me my first apartment and do special classes with me. But instead, my father lied, manipulated to the state, lied to the program, lied to the state worker, lied to Social Security to try to make sure he could steal the rent money and make sure I did not get an education I needed. I needed an education on how to file certain paperwork like tax records, like Social Security records, like there's different classes that help you become adult, move into your first apartment. But because my father lied and manipulated and stole money, I didn't get to do those classes. I got, and after a year and a half of being there or so, they said I was going to have to leave because my father stole the money. Now that they know that my father was keeping my rent money the whole time, now we have to pay them a year's and a half of rent money back, $600 a month. And I'm going to have trouble for the rest of my life as well trying to clean up this mess. And I bail my father out instead. They're going to bring him to court. They're filing charges. They're guaranteed a win. The state and the federal government, the Social Security Administration, guaranteed that my father would lose that money and have to pay it back. They said there was no lawyer on this earth that my father could use to get out of this one. They said they could guarantee that I would get paid back. But then the program also said if I did go down this road, then I would have had to pay them back anyways. And then my father just lied to the whole entire family. He lied to Valerie. He lied to everybody but me. I knew what the truth was. But he lied saying I was coming home to take care of my mother instead of saying I fucked up big time. I stole some money. Zach didn't get his classes he was supposed to get. He didn't get his first apartment. I ruined it all. Instead of saying the truth, he just said, Zach's coming home because he's going to take care of his mother. Nobody bought that for a minute. You could see it in Valerie's disbelief when people told Valerie or the family that. They laughed. They said it must be something else. It must be something else. But they all blamed the child again. Just blame the little orphan boy. He must have done something. Nobody knew what it could have been. But they all figured I must have done something like got thrown out. Nope. My father did something wrong this time. He fucked up this time. But he has no honest bone in his body. See, he can't admit to his mistakes. He can't use the full detail like I did. Like how I said I held a match to slug slime. Or how I burnt a table and a car. Or how I said I played with matches. See, I can take full responsibility, and then other people turn it around and turn it into their own invention, and they twist the details to fit any of their own fantasies. And the funny part is they weren't there to see it. They weren't there to do it. They're basing it upon information that was created by my mother or father only out of thin air. They weren't there to see shit. They don't know shit. They never spent the time to get to know what was going on with me. None of them did. My mother, she was covering up her crimes. My father made it clear he didn't want to get involved. My brother wasn't anywhere in Texas, New Mexico, anywhere in my life. Neither was my sister. They all just sucked off of me. And what I mean by that is, what do you think would have happened to my brother's son, my nephew, if instead my mother wasn't hurting me, he was hurting my nephew? Because if I wasn't around, she would have been hurting him. Absolutely. She would have been just as crazy. I mean, people just don't magically have crazy, wave the wand, crazy disappear. That doesn't work with women of my mother's caliber. And people like me that have epilepsy, You can't drug us into submission either. You just got to give us treatment. You give us a diagnosis on paper, an epilepsy medication, and look, you get better. You treat the disease the child has, and the child gets better. Who would have guessed if you treated the actual disease that the patient is speaking about, then maybe the patient would get better? Instead of trying to listen to a crazy woman and an 89-year-old and a bunch of people that never gave a fuck about the health or well-being of that person. Why would a doctor want to listen to somebody who doesn't even care about the well-being of the person they're giving information about? They wouldn't. And damn, that triliptal's working pretty good, but I still feel my speech fucking up. And I took it really early this morning. I never take it this early. Never. It's usually between 6 and 7. I try to take it if I'm sleeping in by extra an hour, maybe 8, 8:30. But I never take it 4 a.m. I took it, rolled back over, and then woke up. I mean, this has been a tough morning for me. Thank God that the Zofran and the triliptal has worked. Because I'm not vomiting anymore, but this place, I just can't take any more seizures, any more head injuries, any more injuries whatsoever, just because of my family. It's like, really? You guys are going to do this to me? You guys did this to me. You guys put your hands on me doing this to me. You guys took something out of a cabinet. This was Patricia. You put it in my hand and forced it into a child's mouth. You forced it by pulling tricks and switches and lies and manipulations, even forcing him on the ground to get injections, double doses in the same hour. You even had him get naked in front of strangers. Yes, my mother and father had me get naked in front of strangers, and they like to pretend like this was some medical treatment. No, all I did was have a visit. I would have a visit with Dan Beaudry, a friend of the family, or my father, or my mother, and they would have to have me get naked, and it would only be a 23-year-old staff member, and that's it. They're not doctors, they're not nurses, they are interns. Nothing but interns, and these are people not even 30 years old yet. And this isn't just one person. This is like 8 different people I had to get naked in front of during the stay at that hospital. And so, yeah, they're having me get naked in front of random people. And not only that, this same hospital, Lowell Treatment Center, also injected me with the same medication twice in the same hour just because my roommate told the story. Yes, my roommate said I wasn't taking meds just to get back at me for a joke. I told him to stop talking about cocaine. This kid was talking about cocaine while I was trying to eat a candy cane. I'm trying to eat a candy cane. He's talking about cocaine, so I tell him basically to shut up by making fun of him. Now he decides he's going to get back at me by saying to the staff members at the front desk that I didn't take my meds. The staff members come in, ask me if I took my meds. Actually, this isn't even a staff member. This is one of the evil nurses that like to hurt children. She actually used to get kicked. She used to smile when kids were in pain, and she would frown upset when kids were laughing and playing. It was the weirdest thing I ever saw, and she obviously liked hurting children. I mean, it was just quite obvious to anybody who spent any time with this woman. So anyways, this kid in my room tells a story up at the front desk. This nurse lady comes by my room asking me if I took my meds. I said, of course I did. You guys saw me take my meds. Why are you guys asking me if I took my meds? And then they go, oh, Bobby over there said you didn't. And I go, wow, Bobby's lying. I didn't say, I took my meds. And they go, well, I don't know about that. Well, come on, we're going to give them again. Will you be willing to take your medication again? I said, no, I'm not taking a double dose of 5 different pills in the same hour. That's dangerous. I don't think a doctor would want me taking the same pills in the same hour twice. And she goes, well, that's not for you to be concerned about. And I'm like, I'm not taking the same meds twice. Oh, yeah, we'll see about that. Get him, grab his shoulders, throw him to the ground. Okay, inject him with this one. No, stop. Inject him with that one and inject him with this one. And that happened to me twice in my life. once with like 5 medications in a state hospital called Lowell Treatment Center while they fooled around with drugs. Here's 3 here. Here's a morning dose. Here's an afternoon dose. Here's a night dose. Here's this. And like I said, the protocol was if somebody made up a story, then you should just go straight to drugging the kid. And that's the world we live in Massachusetts today. They don't have protocols to actually have checks and balances. All they need is a complaint like that, and the children in these programs have figured that out. They do it to each other all the time. If you want to get back at a kid in a program, all you have to do is tell a story about the kid not taking his meds, and they will hold him down, forcibly inject him with a double dose of medications. And see, all the other kids knew there was something wrong with my back. So when they wanted to get back at me, they would throw a football at my back, causing me to go, oh, and spasm to the ground. It was always funny because I would fall to the ground instantly. You throw a football right in the middle of my back, and I would go, oh,